Hello and welcome to OPMConnect, the program that helps explain government's activities and policies. I'm Naomi Francis. Today we look at water management, especially in regards to the corporate areas. Some communities are experiencing a lack of or shortage of water, if you will. And so today we're being joined by the Minister with responsibility for water. He really is the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Senator the Honorable Pearnel Charles Jr. Welcome, sir. We also have Mr. Michael Dunn, the Vice President of Operations for the Eastern Division at the National Water Commission. And joining us too is Mr. Audley Thompson, the Managing Director of Rural Water Supply Limited. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. This is a hot-button issue. Water is life, as they say. Minister, help us understand what's really going on regarding the provision of water, particularly in some communities in the corporate area.
Well, firstly, it is the most challenging of topics. And besides our national security, I think that for Jamaica now, this has been the topic on the radio, in the communities, in the churches, because water is so critical to every aspect of your life. That's why our Prime Minister has truly mandated that we ramp up the communication so we can ensure that the public is fully aware of the accurate information and of the situation we are in. We are committed, firstly, to ensuring that we develop a system that will allow us to not repeat the mistakes of the past. We've inherited a system which is deficient and vulnerable because it relies so much on rainfall. And we're moving towards, in the medium and long term, a system that will introduce different means of sourcing and delivering water and reducing the wastage. But in the short term, which is what people want to hear, yes, what are we doing? So the NWC and the Rural Water, in addition to other agencies and the municipalities, have been working very hard to really assess the drought, which has been an intense and a prolonged drought. It has caused us to see massive reductions in flow to the rivers, which feed into our treatment systems. And so the reality, the practical reality for us, take for instance our Mona Reservoir, which has a capacity of 808.5 million gallons. When you're seeing that at 30%, 35% now, which is improved, it gives you a very clear appreciation that we have to be very efficient with what we have, particularly because you have to put that reduction in flow within the context of the what you call unreliable weather systems. The
well,
effects.
Climate change is a reality. I mean, we're speaking about it at the United Nations as we speak in New
So
York. So it is something that we have to confront.
And Minister of Foreign Affairs and team is there. The effect of climate change is not just erosion and drought and intensified rain, but it causes us as the policymakers to now have to rethink, recalibrate how we define the way forward. No longer can you plan as you would have 20 or 25 years ago. You have to plan for the unexpected. And so you will hear some details, but what we're doing is we are recognizing the pressure that our country is under now. We are putting it in the realistic context. We are ramping up the trucking and putting in place a trucking schedule that can be more certain and bring confidence. We know we have some challenges with that, but we are doing everything possible.
So I want to hear some more about the everything possible that is being done, but let me get to the NWC first. You gave an overview of what's happening with Mona Dam. At present, it's 35%. What's happening at Hermitage, Mr. Dunn?
Okay, well, Hermitage is currently at about 40% of capacity.
Wow,
so
still below 50.
Absolutely. So we are producing, on an average, about 8 million gallons of water per day. On a normal circumstance, the demand is 16 million, so you can see there where the deficit and where the shortfall is.
Yes.
And as the minister had pointed out, Mona, which is just about 30-35% of capacity, 35 to be accurate, we are producing roughly about 8 million gallons down from 16, 17 million gallons of water, and that was just since 2 days ago. Prior to that, it was down to about 4 million gallons per day.
So there's a real problem.
So there is a deficit.
With the resources we have, though, you're saying that not all customers of the National Water Commission is affected. So tell us exactly what is happening in terms of the distribution of water.
All right, so let me, and it's a very important point you touch on, so let me tell you, because it's not the entire corporate areas that is affected. And if I would start from 6 miles, so Duane Park, Washington Gardens, Patrick City, Meadowbrook Estate, Queensboro, Havendale, Meadowbrook, Forest Hill, Chancery, Stonehill, don't have a problem.
They have regular water? They
have regular water supply. It's only the area that is bordered down along like State Gardens, Zade Gardens, Dunn Court, areas along Mullines Road, and locations along Walton Park Roads and some part of Eastwood Park Road that are Maxfield Avenue that are currently being affected, and that is directly in relation to the unrepaired pipeline that has been out of operation since December last year. We are expecting, as the minister probably tell you, that that pipeline should be back in operation sometime by December of this year.
By December?
Yeah, so
So that pipeline really, where does that link to in terms of a source to get customers water?
Okay, so that particular pipeline brings water from the Rio Kobe system directly along the boulevard that serves along Mullines Road, goes along Walton Park Road, and serves that general area. So those are the areas that are currently be experiencing the challenge. Roughly about 25,000 customers, which turns out to be about 106,000 persons. So it's not an entire corporate area that is being affected. In fact, if you look at the system that are served by Mona, we are able to manage the system through some amount of regulation. So we'll shut off the system at night and we'll open it back in the morning. There are going to be some pockets of inconsistency in supply, and what we try to do is to use trucking as a short-term solution to close that gaps. But I will tell you that, as anybody will know, trucking is a clumsy way of doing business because the travel time and the turnaround time is time consuming. But to the extent that we are able to deal with that situation, we are managing.
Before I bring in Mr. Thompson, I want to stick with you a little bit, Mr. Dunn, and I want to also invite those watching on social media to pose your questions to the Minister, the NWC, and of course Rural Water in terms of what's happening in your area so that you can get an update really in terms of when you may be able to get that precious commodity in your pipes. But I want to stick a little bit with you, Mr. Dunn, because what you're saying essentially is that once we get that source, the Rio Kobe source coming into the corporate area, things should essentially normalize.
Yes, things should normalize. So those locations along Mullines Road, up the boulevard, down Walton Park and Road, should see an improvement in service delivery because there's not a shortage of water coming from that side. Right? So once that pipeline repair is completed, which is the latter part of this year, we should be okay in terms of that.
So customers in
5.5 million gallons.
One second, yes, Minister, say that.
5.5 million gallons of water that will be flowing in up that pipeline. Right now we have half or less than half because of the interim pipeline that has been placed. But if you can imagine at full capacity being able to pump 5.5 million gallons in, that's almost 10% of what is used by the corporate area. Because on a daily basis, the corporate area is requiring an estimate of 60 million gallons per day. Okay? So the repair of that pipeline is going to have an enormous impact on our capacity and ability to deliver this service consistently.
You know, since you jumped in, and I really want to go back to Mr. Dunn, since you jumped in, the issue though is that the population density in the corporate area is really has ballooned over the last maybe decade.
Exactly.
So really it's going to require a policy shift, as you'd alluded to. But what would that policy shift look like? Where are we at in terms of the discussion, and where would we go? Wonderful
question. So right now we are developing policy on the basis of contemplating the future. No longer are we doing things for now. We're looking at what is to come. And so you'd have heard our Prime Minister make an announcement of another 15 million gallons that will be pumped into the corporate area. And that's to come from the Rio Kobe water treatment plant, which we are going to be starting soon. It's in the final negotiation stages now. So that is in addition to what we have already. That 15 million gallons should put us in a good position to really satisfy what we have now in the demand now, in addition to the high rises and the other development that we have coming up. Now, we're not stuck there. We're also aggressively advancing the rehabilitation of wells. And so in the corporate area, we're looking at wells which previously would have been abandoned because of nitrate content. And we are finding new ways of introducing technology, reverse osmosis and otherwise, that will allow us to utilize that water, which may give us an additional 10 million gallons per day. So in terms of policy and linking it and aligning it to operation, we are doing what is necessary now to utilize sources more efficiently and introduce new sources and rehabilitate what we had before. The third big thing that we're doing is reducing our waste. What most Jamaicans are not aware of is that we lose an estimated up to 70% across our country. In the corporate area, it is an estimated 63% that we were losing.
Acceptable at all.
It is unacceptable. And so what the government has done is we're now in the 4th year of a program, which is a partnership program with a company called Maya Jamaica, which is moving towards water efficiency. It is determining where our leaks are, looking for along the pipeline breaches, and finding ways to reduce what we have called non-revenue water. That's water which we produce, but which we get no money for, no revenue. So it's either through leaks, loss, or theft. And so you have the recovery content, which is 15 million gallons. You have the rehabilitation of new wells, another 10 million gallons. And you have this potential of reducing our waste, which has perhaps the greatest potential of us getting more water to you. Because, one, we already have it. You're not finding any new source. You're just using what you have more efficiently.
Pause a second, because I have the first question from social media, which is, when will we build more water catchment areas? Which, of course, I'm sure you will also allude to the fact that we're looking at new sources in terms of the wells as well. But Mr. Dunn, if you could, because that catchment area kind of scenario is also a technical thing to look at. How do we identify where we put a catchment area?
Well, let me answer your question. We don't have a storage capacity issue, you know. What we have is a problem to be able to sustain and maintain those capacity that we currently have. So as the minister has alluded to, with the addition of new wells, depending on the water from underground and with that new content water sheet plant to come on stream, that certainly will alleviate the problem. But the other thing that the minister did not mention, and I want to point it out, there is a particular pipeline from 6 Mile that runs all the way along Spanish Town Road up to Glenmore Road that has been there for in excess of 50 years. And it's a very, very shaky infrastructure. And that is limiting or reducing our ability to be able to bring additional water into Kingston up to Marsco Road. So that pipeline to the extent of $60 million is being contemplated, and in fact is far along in terms of being replacement. So that is going to be an added solution to the problem. What the minister had mentioned.
And that's a solution in the corporate area.
Yes.
And so we're focused on the corporate area because it seems the corporate area has the greatest issue. What about the rest of Jamaica, and in particular too, the population density in areas such as Portmore, Clarendon? Okay,
well, we don't have a problem in St. Catherine as we speak. Okay? No, we don't have a problem in Portmore.
Including Hellshire?
Including Hellshire. And as I had pointed out to you earlier, the problem with Portmore is more of an operational issues related to GPS and so forth. Now, that matter has been sorted out, but what we have also done to improve the service level to Portmore is that there are 2 additional wells at Goshen Government Park. One has already been put back in place, and the other one will be ready by within another month or thereabout. And with those 2 wells coming into operation, there will be an additional 1 million gallons going to Portmore, which should be able to suffice and meet the demand in Portmore. So there should not be an issue in Portmore. And as we speak, Portmore really don't have an issue.
Okay.
Outside of the occasional operational challenges.
So apart from the corporate area then, Mr. Dunn, you're saying that we're pretty much okay with the rest of Jamaica?
Well, let me tell you, the rest of Jamaica, the West is really not seeing a problem. There is currently a situation in Portland and St. Mary and St. Anne. A lot of those locations are surface sources, and those rivers are running very, very low. Some of the streams have dried up completely. So we are having a challenge in those areas. It's not much on the news, but it is still a problem. In fact, we have been able to kind of manage the station very well by moving the water around from one location to another and sharing it, doing a bit of regulation, augment with trucking. So that has been okay. I noticed, you would have noticed that you have not heard in the news about schools being out of water. And so we have been able to manage that situation very well by doing extensive trucking. And that seems to be kind of making the problem as lesser. But there are issues, but there are issues in Portland, St. Mary, and St. Anne to a lesser extent.
We still have national issues though, and I think we have to be very careful to not say all is well.
Yes.
Because even if we were to get all of the rain that would be feasible for our storage, we still have significant issues and challenges in relation to our transmission systems, in relation to a myriad of water treatment systems that have to be advanced and fast-tracked across this country. And so I want to make that very clear, because I know that once persons in the West hear or say there's no problem, I have gotten the calls. Yes. There are issues. And so one of the things that we have to do, and that I will be insisting is done, is a proper evaluation of all our water assets.
Yes.
We must know where our assets are. We must know the status of our assets. And that is why we have an upgraded maintenance plan that is being put in place to reduce the situation and eliminate the situation where one dege tool can cause you to have no water in a community for 8 months because of a procurement problem. Water is not something that we can allow to fall into that problem and that kind of treatment. So let me make it very clear that as Minister, I recognize that there are problems which are exacerbated not just by the rainfall issues and the drought. We have to have better management on the ground, and that is something which we're going to be insisting from our agencies. You speak about catchment in other areas outside of the corporate area. Mr. Thompson is here, and he can give you details, because we're not just focusing on the corporate area, because there are several persons who are in the rural areas listening to us, saying, what about us? And they're not functioning within the ambit of NWC. And so between the parish council and our rural water agency, they have that responsibility. And so we are going to be working hard to make sure they implement the projects. Why do I say so? Under the Andrew Holness government, we have moved the allocation to rural water from an estimated $100 million to almost $800 million. I don't think we have ever seen that kind of increase before. What it says is that we are prioritizing all Jamaicans, not just Kingston and St. Andrew and Portmore and St. Catherine. And so Mr. Thompson can speak to you about the catchment areas.
So let me hear from Mr. Thompson first in ensuring that you have all of Jamaica understand what does Rural Water Supply Limited do?
All right. You have the non-utility service areas, right? The non-utility service areas are mainly areas that are managed by the municipal corporation and in some instance community organizations. These are small systems, right? And the modality of supply might be a spring, might be a river source, might be catchment tanks in terms of rainwater harvesting. Rural Water Supply Limited have gotten, as the Minister explained, an increased budget of $800 million for this financial year. At present, we intend to complete 26 systems in rural areas. We're talking about water supply systems. In these areas, people...
So ensuring that farmers in St. Elizabeth, in areas in Manchester, in Westmoreland are all on a system that they will get reliable water supply.
All right. Rural Water Supply Limited is mainly for domestic water, not farmers. But we will ensure that the residents in most rural communities. So far, we have started approximately 14 projects, right, in spanning all over the island, right? If you call a parish, I can tell you what project we are doing there and when we intend to complete it.
Portland.
in Portland, you have Kildare, Charlestown, you have an old pipeline that normally supplies Buff Bay, right? And that is being replaced. You have Bangor Ridge up in the hills of West Portland, right? They have challenges in terms of water. We are fixing up an entombment, we are piping it, and we're also fixing up a catchment tank. That's in West Portland.
Boy, you've challenged me, and
East
I
Portland.
gave you the challenge,
East
and
Portland.
you picked it up. Very good.
East Portland, you have some challenges along the strip from Ferry Hill to Long Bay.
Yes, I've
Boston,
heard that.
the water there is salty. We are doing some investigation in drilling a new well in Islington to actually improve that system. Right? So you see, we're working in East and West Portland.
And what about St. Elizabeth, for example?
All right, St. Elizabeth, Top Aberdeen. We're doing a system in Top Aberdeen where the municipal corporation has been at us for several years, right? And we are now putting in place where we're going to take some water, we're going to put up a solar pumping station, and we're going to be building reservoirs and things like that.
Yes. So certainly you're integrating the entire island and not focus too much on the corporate area. You're making sure that everybody has a sense of priority, really, so to speak.
What he could have also mentioned and might want to is the fact that in addition to water systems, we are also implementing rainwater harvesting systems in schools and other institutions. And that's important because it's not just the physical system that's going to make a difference. It is a change of behavior. It is the students and the teachers and the community now becoming participants, beneficiaries, and stakeholders in the introduction of techniques for conservation. You see, where we are in Jamaica, we are positioned in a very unique place geographically.
Absolutely.
And so we have benefits and their liabilities to that. And so we have to find the best ways to harvest, conserve, protect, and use our water. And so the institutions are going to see catchment tanks. We have also introduced maybe about 20 odd catchment tanks are now being either investigated, procured, or being completed, in addition to rainwater harvesting techniques. And again, it's important for me to make it very clear. We are ensuring that our agencies are fitted with the resources to do the job. My job is very simple. It is going to be to make sure that those projects are complete. And so Mr. Thompson, who is working well with me, will tell you that just last week we had meetings where I requested a full audit and evaluation of all the projects. And we are going to be going on the road. There's no more sitting down in AC while people are out there suffering. We're going out to ensure that we meet with the communities, we educate them, we build knowledge while we're building resilience. We're going to also be launching an initiative which will help throughout the schools across this country to ensure that our students and community members become participants in this drive towards water security.
That's good news for so many people. Let me get back to some questions on social media. And now persons are being specific about their area. So I think then, Mr. Dunn, you're under the microscope. Waltham Park Road area, Constant Spring Gardens area, low or no water. What's happening there?
Okay.
You explained the whole matter, but clearly persons who are living in those areas are saying, well, really, we need some.
So as I pointed out to you earlier when you had asked a question, that it is recognized that there's an issue along Waltham Park Road because that area is served from the ferry system. And even though we do some amount of regulation to try and shuffle the water around there, we recognize that a lot of people around there still not getting the precious commodity.
Is it an issue, though, Mr. Dunn, of the water pressure being too low, or there's just no water? Are you trucking then?
Yeah, we are trucking. There's not enough water to go down along that corridor, because as I said, there's a 50% reduction in the amount of water from the source that normally serves that location, which should be resolved by December. We do some amount of trucking, and as I pointed out to you earlier, some people do fall through the crack. Once those information is provided to me at a specific location, I will try and make sure that we try and deal with that particular situation. But I did point out that there's going to be an issue along Walton Park Road, and that issue will continue until to the latter part of this year when the solution is in place.
So again, you're just asking customers to hold strain for a little longer as you work to improve that area.
And just to make contact in regards to location, because we certainly use trucking as a short-term solution.
All right, wonderful. I think this one then would be for Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, this person who's asking the question, I'm living in Anchovy, Mount Carey area of St. James, haven't had water. I'm not sure if it's rural water or NWC. I know you're in charge of the Eastern Division, Mr. Dunn, but any insight you can give to the person asking the question?
I can answer that. The Anchovy water supply, it's supplied by 2 areas, right? They take some water, NWC takes some water from Reading Spring and send some water up into Anchovy. And you also have a blue hole, right, that actually gravitates and feed Anchovy. Recently, we did a small well down in Mount Pearnel that would have alleviated some of the challenges. Notwithstanding, the amount of population there compared to the amount of water that is coming in, right, is larger than the amount of water that is coming in. A system was designed and was actually tendered by the Jamaica Social Investment Fund and the NWC to carry in water from Shetland. If that is completed, that would alleviate the whole of that section as it relates to water supply. So right now, I think they are doing some amount of regulation to ensure that all of that area gets water.
Well done, thank you so much. So Minister, then, we're looking at, in some cases, old infrastructure that must be replaced, must be repaired. In terms, though, of the thrust to ensure that we do that on a timely basis, I mean, how are we going to get that message across to Jamaicans that, listen, it will take time as well?
I think people understand, you know. People understand. It's just frustrating to not have water. So even if you understand and you hear it, the fact is you want water in your pipe. And so that's why we're trying as best as possible to not shy away, but to really confront the conversation.
Yes.
And to not just say, well, we're going to put in real corporate content and this treatment system here, but to explain it so that the public can put our situation in context. So we're suffering from a significant drought, number one. You know that we're going through growing pains in terms of our development, and that is something which we are all going to have to go through if we want to reach where we all want to reach. And so we as a government have to be very careful in assessing the situation and really understanding the frustration. When you talk about trucking, which is unfortunately the main or primary short-term mechanism used, we know that we have challenges even though we're trying to truck, and so we're going to be procuring new trucks.
Tell us a little bit about that. Pause right there, because it really is a significant amount of trucks that we'll be trying to get into the island in a short space of time.
Certainly, and the reason is because we have identified trucking as an inefficient system, but it is the only thing that we can do right now to alleviate the immediate frustration and the immediate challenges that we face. We are all facing it. And so, as we know, there are a number of things that we're doing from the policy level.
How many trucks are we getting in to begin
we're
with?
looking at 8 new trucks from NWC in addition to 6 which we're looking to repair.
That's 14 trucks.
Tanks which we have, and we're also at the ministry trying to have an additional amount on top of that, which will perhaps be around 10 trucks.
So we're looking at possibly a good fleet of 24 coming on stream.
Or more, because I don't want to announce it now, but we are, I don't want to go into the full details, but we are also speaking to some of the international partners who may very well be able to assist us with another complement, which will be more than that. The fact is, we know there's an issue, and we know, as you heard from Mr. Dunn, that as we do the trucking schedule, what people want is certainty.
Yes.
They understand that there's not enough water, but they want to know that if we're getting water at 4 p.m., it's coming at 4 p.m. And so we have to work on that. I know that Chairman Alvin Hill and myself, in addition to President Barnett and Mr. Dunn, have spoken about the fact that we have to work on having a more certain schedule. And I must say thank you to Mr. Dunn and to the team that's on the ground. They have been working hard. We have some way to go, but we're going to get there.
Mr. Dunn, just before we go, we only have less than 5 minutes to wrap up the program. Can you give us an update on the Yallis area in terms of rainfall and intake there?
Okay, so you know that the Yallis bring water into the Mona Reservoir.
Yes.
In fact, I was just out there just last week. We had a tour out there, and in fact, the intakes are healthy, but the streams are very, very, very low. In fact, when we look at what is known as the channel is normally probably about 6 feet high. The water levels is now just like at about 2 to 3 feet. So it is that bad in terms of the inflows. And it is manifested in itself what is ended up into the Mona Reservoir. Normally you would average roughly about 14 to 15 million gallons of water into the reservoir from the Yallis system. It is now down to, well, up to yesterday it was about 8 or 9 million gallons. And the week before that it was 4. So it's real bad. We have never ever seen that kind of, outside of, I think, 2010. That level of low inflows from that system.
You know, it's significant that we're almost ending on this point, because the issue of climate change is something that every single Jamaican must take note of and find a way to do their part to mitigate against it. You know, I got an update from the Met Service even just before we started to say that Jamaica's bimodal rainfall pattern has entirely shifted and changed. So, for example, you'd have seen rain falling more on the eastern side. It's now shifted to the western side. And the 2 peak periods when we would have a lot of rainfall, we're not seeing as much rainfall. So certainly in terms of, 1, conservation methods, and 2, methods to ensure that we protect our environment, each Jamaican has a role to play right there.
Because I must point out here, during this period of time, which is September and October, this is when the reservoir is supposed to be filled.
And overflowing. And
so come January, we normally should start at about 100% of capacity, or even 90%. We're at 30% now. Last year, this time, if my memory serves me correct, the Yallis was, the Mona Reservoir was somewhere about 60 to 70% of capacity.
It's a reality we all have to face as Jamaicans.
And this is a period it should be filling, and we're getting the rain in spots.
Wow.
You know?
All right. So I give you a final word then. What are the things that we need to be mindful of as customers, as residents living in Jamaica, knowing that climate change is a reality, and 2, that we need water because it's life? Mr. Thompson.
Rural water will ensure that we fulfill our mandate and satisfy the 2030 vision policy to ensure that all Jamaicans, rural Jamaicans, have access to water at least 100 meters from their house.
Thank you.
I recognize that we have a lot of suffering for the customers now. And I'm telling you that certainly in terms of the short-term solution, the NWC will do its utmost best to try to alleviate that particular situation until the long-term solutions are in place.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. And Minister, I give the final word to you.
We're going to make sure that our agencies are working, and we're going to continue to reevaluate and develop policies that are going to really contemplate the effects of climate change. We have to get it into our legislation. We're looking now on ensuring that storage capacity, for instance, is in the developments, and other things to diversify the system. As you said, we don't know where it's going to rain. And so our system has to be flexible, it has to be robust, and it has to be resilient. It's going to take a massive investment, but the government has already started to do so, and we will continue to make that investment for Jamaica.
Thank you so much, Minister. And as we end talking about water, really, we really want to acknowledge the fact that the Prime Minister leading the delegation to the United Nations General Assembly is really, really paying attention to this matter of climate change adaptation, mitigation, and of course, financing. Very, very important. And certainly it's something that we all as Jamaicans must watch and must find a way to be a part of in terms of solutions. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's edition of OPM Connect. Join us again next week for another interesting discussion.